Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing another gouache painting, and this time I'm going to use my second most recommended gouache brand, HIMI. I want to talk about what I love about it and why I keep going back to it, but before we get to that, I wanted to thank the sponsor of today's video, Skillshare. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives with thousands of classes on film, illustration, animation, design, and productivity. I've been finding it really useful, especially in rediscovering mediums that I don't use very often, and I am currently taking a class on alcohol markers by Carla Alcazar, and I can't wait to show you guys what I come up with when I finally do learn more about the medium and understand it better. And I also teach my own class on Skillshare where I focus on how to layer with watercolors to create depth in your portraits. It's all guided instructions and in real time, so if you think that sounds great, I will be seeing you guys there. The first 500 people that used my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare, which includes access to my new class and all the other classes on there as well. So for this video, I'm going to be using my HIMI gouache. This was in my favorite art supplies video last year, and while I do love my Holbein gouache and use it more often, I have found myself picking this up more and more recently, and this is also my third set because I lost the last one I had, and the very first set I had got moldy, so it's really unfortunate. But this is one of the main draws of this gouache is its price. So I got this for 600 something pesos on Fantastic Bean Philippines, and that is all for this big set. Put it in perspective, that will be the price of only 2 of my Holbein tubes, so it's an amazing deal. It all depends on your location though, so always check the prices where you live. It could vary greatly depending on your location. But this is an amazing set. It has 36 colors, which is such a great advantage for a gouache like this, and I will talk more about color mixing with it later. But it's a big set with a lot of different colors, and it's also a lot of gouache for the price. The set itself has containers for your brushes, so you can keep them there, and it also has a mixing palette, so you can have everything you need in this one set. Today I am using it over my pen sketches, and this I think is one of its best uses, because when doing a lot of layers and a lot of color mixing, I don't think it shows enough of its strength, and when it's used very loosely like you would with watercolors, it tends to not be as vibrant and saturated as maybe most artist quality gouache. Because it feels like there's a lot of fillers in the paint, it also doesn't layer as well as those gouache brands as well. So I found myself using it more for paintings like this where I am not planning on using thin layers over top of each other, basically just going at it in one go. And if you follow the series, it's mostly what I do on these types of sketches. And while these are student quality paints, so we don't really expect them to be light fast, I use them a lot on my sketchbooks, and I've found even my oldest ones using these same paints, they haven't really faded often, mainly because they're not exposed to the sun, but they've all surprisingly held up pretty well. They are extremely opaque, which is my favorite thing about them. I like that even when I'm using thin paint with them, completely covers up my pen sketches. And I'm using this red pen, so they're pretty intense. They're also not waterproof, so it's best to use thick gouache with them so there's no excess water to reactivate your pens. So I just really like how both of these mediums blend well together, and I like that because I use it in such a specific way that it doesn't really feel like I'm compromising with how much I paid for it. I'm really just using good quality gouache in the way that I intend to use it. Because of its opacity, it does sometimes get hard to keep track of where my line work is at because it covers them so well. But because of how I use the gouache for this series, where I'm almost tiling the way I'm painting them, it's not that much of an issue. I could just really use the paint to its advantage this way, and I just really like that. While this is a watercolor sketchbook, this is my Moleskine sketchbook, I really don't use any water at all for this. I talked about this in my live painting sessions with sketches and scrubs before, but when I'm doing this, I really don't use any water to make my gouache movable. I mostly just use the water to reactivate the gouache. It's not the same as how I use water in my watercolors, where I use it almost as its own medium in the paint and it has its own personality. The water, when I'm using gouache like this, is mostly just to make the gouache more easy to work with. Other than that, it doesn't really affect the movement in my gouache at all. This little spread that I had is really mostly focused on the shapes that they're making over the plain starch white background. So I'm using a lot of different colors with this. It's a mixture of slightly muted grays for some of them and also really vibrant colors. There's really not that much contrast to any of these sketches. Well, it does look like that when I started off from this one on the right, because I started with such deep shadows. Those shadows that I put in were some lighter grays. They just look like they're dark because the colors that I'm putting over top of them are so much lighter. This is just really fun. I really like the contrast between using gouache this way versus how I used it with my last gouache painting, which was a lot of really thin layers over top of each other, straightening the line between gouache and watercolors. With this, there's no confusing either of them for each other. It's just its own completely different medium. And while that does make this gouache more restrictive than, say, my Holbein gouache, it still has its own use in my collection and I still use it a lot and it still holds a special place in my heart. That's why I keep buying it, even though I have more than enough gouache that I will possibly need from my Holbein sets. I want to talk about the colors on this set because they are really cute. I haven't noticed before, but they do come in these duos, which are very related colors and just have slight differences in hues, or some of them just are brighter than the other. I think this is so cool, and I also like that there's pastel colors in here because I think those are hard to mix for yourself when you're working with student quality gouache. A lot of the time when you're mixing lighter colors, they often get muddy with the fillers that is in these paints versus artist quality paint. So I really like that they're on there. I really liked how they approached this set, which is more colors versus the bigger sizes that they used to have, because you don't really use a lot of gouache. You can really stretch your gouache for a very long time. I think a set like this could last years, so I like that they went for more color options versus just the bigger containers they used to have for their other sets. So this is all really self-explanatory. There's really not a lot of stuff to talk about in the technique of this sketch. I just used a lot of different colors that would work well together, and I also made sure that because a lot of these colors are very bright, that I'm using a lot of light grays in there to make those colors more vibrant and to also make those colors less in your face for this entire thing. And the background stuff are just stuff that I decided to add in to play around with the shape over the white background. But that is really it. I really enjoyed using my smallest brush for this. And also I wanted to take this time to thank everyone who bought my brushes. They're finally sold out. Thank you so much for your support. That really meant so much to me. And also, I will be streaming here on YouTube more now, so watch out for that too. If you guys want to see a detailed tutorial for this, I will be doing one for Patreon this month. It will all be in real time, so if you want to check that out, the link to my Patreon will be in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you especially to my patrons for supporting me. I will be seeing you guys again soon.